hair position. On YouTube, I am it's extremely dark, but hopefully you guys can see all right. But these are some of the things that we don't really talk about that often, that we don't speak about. Compassion, it might be a sacrifice. I'm not sure if it is or isn't, but I want to talk about compassion. We need compassion in these days more than anything else. Once again, we give all praise and honor to the Most High. We give all praise and honor to Him for my wife, the Honorable Maya, who lives a life that's able to be honored. You can check her out on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish. Not A&D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She's a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. And we're thankful and grateful for everything that she does for the community. Um, and we're thank you guys for being on with us today. And let's go ahead and get into compassion and talk about the need for it, especially at times such as this, times as today. I was even saying when we talked about it on Patreon that, when we talk about all these other things, we should make sure that we are compassionate toward the family, those who saw the shooting. Lack of compassion caused people to start putting videos of his death apparently on and everything like that. And we need to figure out how to use compassion in our daily lives and our daily walk to be able to become greater. And we thank you guys for being on. So hello to everybody. Thanks for being on. Hello, Dawn. Hello, Jay. How you doing? Hello to Bounty, Big Brother Thomas, Sister Betty, Brother Vincent, Baguette's talking. Chef, how you doing? Minister Joseph. Let's see. Is it Kalia Sky? I hope I said that correctly. Thanks for being part of the community today. And as people are coming on, and we get ready to try and end this somewhat earlier than usual, but since we got classes that are going to start today. By the way, as a reminder, I will be on tomorrow, Wednesday, 8 a.m. Eastern New York time. If you want to join us, we won't be on the conference call, but we'll be on. We'll make sure that we change that. Matter of fact, let me do that while we're on here now. I'll just put that on the Google Calendar invite so that everybody knows that we will be on live on TikTok. So there's no questions about that, and we don't miss nobody misses. But I want to talk about the compassion. My wife shared a couple of videos and shared a story with me today that was excellent. And I thought I would share it with you to kind of see the reality of even the people who we consider to just be criminals or vagabonds or people who we shouldn't pay attention to or give any love to, how necessary it is, especially in these days and these times that we're in, that we show compassion. Sorry, just trying to make sure everybody knows we'll be on TikTok live. Alrighty. Alrighty. But yeah, so we want to talk about compassion today, and thanks. My wife is on. Awesome. Thanks for being on, babe. Once again, check out my wife as far as natural medicine tinctures and everything on TikTok, YouTube, website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish, not A&D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. So compassion. The story that my wife showed with me when she was watching somebody on TED Talk. I don't know the guy's name off the top of my head, so forgive me for not being able to give you the name. But there was a story that she told to me about a family who had opened up a restaurant. And as they were sitting in the restaurant, they were all sitting down together and they began to eat and have drinks and be merry and celebrate the fact that they had this restaurant that opened up. And a thief came in, or at least somebody who was going to be a thief. Had in his mind he was going to steal. He comes in, he takes a gun out of his pocket, he puts it up to the head of the daughter of the people who are the owners or the main owners or however the story, I'm not sure exactly, but of daughter parents, and basically says, give me the money, right? Then he goes up to, I think, the wife or maybe another woman and basically repeats himself and says, if they don't start giving money and cash to him, then he's going to basically blow people's heads off. The family is freaking out. They don't know what to do in this situation. They don't have any cash. So somebody decides, well, maybe we should kind of do like reverse psychology or use some type of guilt trip. And so they ask him, they say, well, what would your mother say if she were to see you doing this or whatever? The man's reply is, I don't have an effing mother. Okay. So that's not going to work too well. The guy basically says, though, you know what, can you give me some wine? Right. So he sits down at the table. They give him a bottle of wine. He begins to drink with them. And from there, then he asks for some of the cheese and stuff they have laid out. So they give him some cheese, things of that nature. He sits down with them. Then you know what his next thing that he asked for? He came in with a gun out, put it to people's heads, stuff like that. He asked for money. They don't have that. He asked for wine. They give him wine. He asked for cheese. They give him cheese. Then you know what he asked for next? He asked for a hug. Before everything else he could have asked for, could have said, well, give me your jackets, give me this, give me that. He asked for a hug. That's what he needed. He asked for love. He asked for a hug. So I think it was the father. He gives him a hug. Then it's like the wife. She gives him a hug. Then somebody says, why don't we do a group hug? How you doing, Sister Cynthia? So they come up and they give him a group hug. After they finish giving him the group hug, he eventually walks out with his glass of wine. And as he's walking out with his wine, he says, I'm sorry. They don't call the police. They don't do anything. That was the end of it. Compassion. He didn't need to be locked up, even though he did something very offensive. All right. Somebody pulls a gun on your child and stuff like that. That's highly offensive. But what he needed wasn't to sit down and be in jail and lose more of his humanity, possibly take his own life after maybe he takes the life of somebody else. How you doing, Elion? Right. I thank you, Baguette. Appreciate it. He didn't need all those things. How you doing, Miko? What he needed was compassion. Even the word compassion, if we lay that out, the word compassion, it's calm, which a lot of us think it has to do with communicated things like that. But calm, the root word of a lot of different words we use, commune, communication, compassion, etc. It really means to be one when you break it down to its bare essence. The word passion is actually a word that can be used interchangeably with the word heart, especially for those of us that are Avda or Hebrew in culture. Passion also can mean suffering. So compassion is telling us that we need to be one with somebody suffering, not to cause others to suffer, but can you be one with somebody suffering? We talked about this earlier in the rising session, Romans chapter 15, verse 1, that all these things that we're trying to become through the Christology, the study of Christ, the study of Mashiach, the study of the Messiah, the study of love, the study of embracing who we really are in eternity, is really for us to get to Romans 15:1, which says that those of you who are strong should take on the infirmities of the weak. That word infirmity, not meaning just to be physically sick, but actually to mean to have mental health issues, mental challenges, spiritual issues. And thanks for the love. Appreciate it. The compassion is to become one with somebody else's suffering. And the problem, even though suffering is a problem, don't get me wrong. However, the problem is not so much today that we suffer. The problem is that we don't suffer with anybody else. How you doing, Ladybug? Thanks for being on. Right. Our problem is not that we have suffering. The problem is that people are suffering and they do not think that anybody else cares. This is why people, have their own lives extinguished sometimes by their own selves. Because they get to a place where they believe, man, this life that's hard and these experiences I've had and these things that I wish I could just talk to somebody about, but I have to be strong, or I've got a family. I've told you guys stories of brothers that I knew who's, there's a brother in particular who I've talked about in times past where, he saw his own father take his life. He saw him and his mother weren't getting along. His own college that he was going to at the time, didn't make sure that they did they were supposed to do to help him to be able to take care of his school. How you doing, Sister Dawn? Or I'm sorry, thank you for the agreement, Sister Dawn, rather. And so he ends up, because he feels like he suffered, like he was like a little brother to me. And I watched him go from having life and being full of joy to eventually not hanging around anymore and trying to figure out where he was, and saw him and he was talking to himself, and then he stopped bathing. And I haven't seen him for years now. And he needs compassion. How you doing, Sister Deja? Thanks for being on. I've watched people, who are homeless. I'm not homeless anymore by the grace of Yah. Praise Yah for that. But in being homeless, I watch people who spent the entirety of their lives, at least the lives that I knew, going through problem after problem after problem, and believing that nobody else really cared, and that they were just supposed to be out there by themselves. Watch people sleep outside and freeze almost to death. Nobody knew that they were going to be outside. They didn't even think, go back to the shelter, see if somebody called a family member, because in their mind, nobody was willing to suffer with them. Or at least, and we do this weird thing, right? Like that we shouldn't suffer with anybody. We shouldn't take on, but if you're going to take on your own cross, right? If we use these terms that we like to use, carry your own cross, as Yashua said, well, Yashua took on the suffering of others, right? And he didn't take on, and I need people to get this, because if we're not careful, we take a lot of motivational speech that's based on scripture, but it's not scriptural, if you get the difference, right? It's based on law, but maybe there's more legalisms than it is actual law, natural law, universal law of attraction, law of first mention type things. We listen to rhetoric more so than law. And if you look at the constructions based off of the law, what happens is we start saying things that other people say. I don't need nobody. I'm not going to worry about this. I'm not going to have anybody get me down, things like that. But helping somebody else is not putting you down. Feeling the pain of somebody else is hard, but it's not something that should be a bad thing. Matter of fact, my wife has taught me and reminds me quite often that if we're going to be traveling, meeting people, praying for people, etc., I better be prayed up, because if I'm going to meet with people who need to feel better, then I'm going to have to actually empathize, yeah, that's pain, fear or selfishness talking. Yeah. And we're afraid of pain. It's a very bad thing. Like, I've watched my wife as a herbalist help people. And if she's going to help people, guess what she has to do? She has to identify their pain. She has to empathize with it. She has to think about how the body works, and even use like her own compass, her own physical compass, as far as where is this in the body. And I've seen her, because she can identify the pain of someone else, now she can begin to heal somebody. Right? Or now she can begin to help the person's body to heal itself, as she oftentimes teaches us, right? That really she's not even healing, or we're not even healing healing ourselves, but it's the body healing itself. All we're doing is introducing something that can be ate, that is natural, that will cause the body to be able to bring itself into oneness, right? And that we are a body of believers. We are a body of human beings,